Okay, so my name is Laura. Welcome to this workshop. I am part of the organizing team at KinoD. I am mostly producing and directing here, but I started out as sound operator, sound mixing, everything sound, basically back in Barcelona. So I'm going to introduce you a little bit to it. This is very introductory, but it has also some technical aspects, so if you're already familiar with sound, you'll make the most of it. I have some bits of gear here, so you can try it out, be familiar with it. It's a little bit of a mix. But yeah, go ahead, next slide. I'll have to say this every time, so I apologize. So, I mean, if you're here, you're probably interested in learning more about sound. I think overall, we know more about image. Maybe it's more visual. We are more torn towards that. But sound is also 50% of film. And the thing is that it's pretty affordable. I'd say like sound is a good job to start. Like if you're looking for a way into like the industry, it's really high demand. I mean, they are asking for sound everywhere. And I noticed that when I came here because they were asking for jobs in Spain and they still do it here in Ireland. So I don't know if that's true for you, that you've been doing so. We'll see. But you do need gear. So that's the thing, that's not my gear. You do need gear. They're very specific about that. It's interesting to understand also the dynamics. So for example, why do we need to record with lavalier and with boom? Why do we need so much? It's all about the information. It's the same way that if we shoot, for example, a scene that then we want to edit later darker, we're still going to shoot it with enough light so that you have enough information. So whenever you do sound, try to record as much as you can on location, and then if you need to take it out in post, you take it out in post. Next slide. Okay, so some of the roles in sound, ideally there would be like specific one boom operator, one sound assistant that would mic the actors, another that could like mix all the levels and everything, but normally you end up either being yourself or with one person. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of everything, all the aspects, so that you're familiar with it. Next, please. Okay, so the way I structure this, we're going to go from pre-production to production and post-production. Feel free to like engage, especially since I know a lot of people you've already done sound. So ask questions to me, to each other, like no problem. This is just like the structure. Okay, next slide. Okay, so you can't really read it. But I put up a template of a script. The script is the first thing you receive, right? Everybody reads it differently. Camera reads it differently. Actors read it differently. How would you read it for sound? What is things, if you can read it, that you could notice in pre-production to help out in production? What are questions you would ask yourself as sound operators, for example?
How big is the room?
How big is the room, for example? Yeah. Is there echo? If it's an exterior, are there schools nearby? Do you need to check when the kids go out? If there's churches nearby, do you need to check the masses or anything? Anything that could cause noise. Do you notice anything else that you'd need? Yeah, how many characters? So you gotta look at how much gear you need. Obviously, it's gonna depend on your budget as well, but that's why it's also interesting. For example, here you have 2 characters, but only one has lines. So you only need 1 lavalier, for example. I've had scenes where it's 5 characters, you only have 3 lavaliers. Lavalier is the mic here, the small mic. Then you check how close they are to each other. So if the actors are really close to each other, maybe you can get away with 1 mic, sharing between the 2. That's just getting creative when you have low budget. Anything else logistically, in terms of logistics? I think it could be sorted. And then you look into the creative side. So you want to look, how can you use sound as a narrative or to create emotions? So what are you going to do with the silences? Are you going to have a leitmotif? Are you going to use follies? You prepare everything so that when you're on set, you're not caught by surprise. You can record as much as you can. You want to have as much sorted out of the logistics so that in post-production, you can take more time to create, to all the creative side, basically. Next slide, please. So it's really important to collaborate. This is one thing I've noticed, me personally, and the people I've worked with in sound, is that we tend to isolate ourselves in our role and not really talk to other departments as much, so we miss on a lot of opportunities. So for example, all these roles here, what could we ask these roles as sound people? What are things that, for example, like makeup and costume?
What kind of sound the clothes will be making?
Yeah,
Wearing something that's like vinyl or
there you go.
soft, will it be kind of rustly?
Yeah. So there's, as you said, what texture did you say? What fabric? Yeah. So there's vinyl, leather, rubber. Any of these textures, fabrics are terrible for sound. And the thing is, you can still fake that texture and have it make less sound. So it's also when you ask for these things and you talk to the other departments, you're also pushing them creatively because they will need to figure out a way to satisfy your needs basically and find a middle ground. So for example, with production, you want to make sure you're always in location. So location scoutings, make sure you're there, and if you can't be there, ask them to record a video with like good quality sound so that you know what's around, because maybe they're gonna be looking at light or at camera angles, what's behind there, and they're not gonna pay attention that there's like a train station, for example. And that's gonna be your responsibility once you get on set. They're gonna ask you why you didn't say it. Direction, you wanna know what the creative ideas are of the director, and it's your job to add to it. So bring any ideas forward, and if they don't use it, they don't use it, but like push yourself. What about the rest? Anybody has any ideas of the rest, what you could do with them? Have you worked with a lot of departments? Have you collaborated?
Not with mostly just with direction.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of kind of more amateur stuff where it's like 80 roles shoved onto one person, so it's usually the same one.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing. So mainly editors, it's interesting to talk about post-production during pre-production, especially how you name tracks, what kind of files you're gonna be delivering. It's all to avoid as many issues in post-production as you can, because then you reach post-production and you're like, that was such a dumb mistake, I could have sorted it so easily. Script supervisor, really if there's no script supervisor, you do it yourself, but write down every take, what the problem was, how many lavaliers you're using, what channel is for each piece of audio. Just have it really written down, because once the editor delivers the files to you, it can be a mess. You can look at your session and not understand what is what. So if you just organize it a little bit from the start, it's so much easier. Camera, there's this thing about like camera and sound hating each other, which I don't think it's true, but like we can play into that. But I think it's really good that camera and sound work together as one team. So you can't, for example, your boom operator cannot be in the frame, and at the same time, camera has to allow you that time to look at the frame and understand the limits of it. So you need to talk to each other. And assistant director, just make sure that everybody is quiet on set, phones are on airplane mode. Let them know that you will need time for X number of time to set up the microphones, then room tone. I'm gonna talk about this later as well. So just say beforehand everything you're gonna need. Next slide, please. Okay, so this would be like a basic but like very good quality setup. We have mainly a recorder, which is the blue piece there, machine there, which could be also this or this. We have a boom pole there, a boom mic, a boom pole, and sets of lavaliers, and your headphones, obviously. So this is like a basic one that would cover, for example, 2 characters, or if you share mic, 4 characters, it's pretty good. Next slide, please. So we're gonna go into detail with all of them. If you wanna grab gear, take a look at it, you can take a look at it. So microphones, mainly I'm gonna talk about shotgun and lavalier microphones. Next, please. Okay, so for example, shotgun microphone would be this one. It's highly directional, okay? And then lavalier microphone would be this small one, and it's what's called omnidirectional. So these directions, they are polar patterns. This is what, if you're thinking of buying microphones, or if you're thinking of what gear you need to hire for a short film or a feature, you need to look at those. This is seen from the top, so you see everything that the microphone reaches. So for example, lavalier microphones are omnidirectional, which means, I don't know how to hold both things, but basically it picks up the sound all around it. This is very useful because if this was really directional and you were to put it here, but sometimes you can't hide it here, so you need to put it in the hair. If it was highly directional, you would not hear the voice, right? You would lose it. So being omnidirectional means that no matter where you hide it, even you can hide it in the scene, it still picks it up pretty good. That's the opposite to the boom, for example, to the shotgun, which is incredibly directional. This is why somebody needs to operate it and change and move depending on how the actors move as well, because if you lose the angle, you lose the voice. So that's mainly the difference. You can see it there, the one down there is the shotgun, and then the omnidirectional is there. And there's other types that are also used for music to record like guitar at the same time as voice, different options as well. Okay, next slide. Okay, so on lavaliers, normally, now they're doing a lot of wireless lavaliers, and like the more technology advances, basically, the smaller the transmitters and the receivers get. Those are these machines here, basically. The transmitter, you can know, it normally has the mute option, so that's how you can differentiate it, and then the receiver. How it works is you connect your microphone to the transmitter, and you have to hide not only the microphone, but the transmitter as well. That's why they are making it smaller, so that it's easier to hide with cast, basically. And then your receiver is what you attach to either the camera or to the recorder, your audio recorder. And that's how the sound gets from the actor's voice to your device. Now here is the connection between the transmitter and the receiver is where some problems may happen depending on how many frequencies are available, or depending on your environment, you might have interferences. So just do a quick checkup before you start, make sure it works, make sure everything is good. And then you have normally two different cables. We're going to talk about cables in a second. Some are for connecting directly to your recorder. You can see it's bigger inputs. And then the other one would be to connect to the transmitter. So it's smaller, it's TRS, okay? Next slide. Okay. Then phantom power is what the energy you're giving. So that is only for the shotgun or certain microphones. So the lavalier, for example, we said that has the transmitter and the receiver. These devices have batteries. So the lavalier microphone is powered by batteries. You need to have enough. You need to make sure you don't run out of them. But the shotgun, you are not connecting it to a specific device. You're either connecting it to your audio recorder or to the camera. That means it's going to be sucking energy from those devices. So if you're powering it into camera, make sure camera is handling well the batteries, because I've been on a lot of sets where they've not taken into account both things that were sucking energy and then suddenly the camera out. So you need to know where you're getting your energy from. Next slide. Okay, so different types of cables. Mostly in sound, I've been using XLR, mini XLR, TRS, or TS. I didn't know anything about cables before I started sound, and then you start learning, because some are so similar that if you just don't pay attention to it, you get on set and the connection doesn't work, and there's adapters for everything, so just about building your gear kit, basically. Okay, next. The main difference between cables, and that's important to understand, to know which ones you need to use in every case. So you've got balanced cables and unbalanced cables. Unbalanced cables you're only going to use for short distances because they are not protected enough and there's more interferences, basically. So balanced cables have two cables inside, and basically what they do, they reverse and they cancel out any interference that happens. So you want to use those for longer distances, especially on a set where there's so many electronics and so much that can go wrong. You want to use those for longer distances. Next, please. Okay, so you've got your cable, you've got your microphone, you got to put it on a device, right? You either, if you're thinking of buying gear, I've put different options and separated different types. Basically, you've got either single system or double system. Single would be what I've seen mostly is connecting the microphone directly to the camera. So you don't need to sync audio because you're recording it all together. And then it's good quality, but it depends on the settings of the camera and how much options you have for sound in that camera. So double system or dual system would be when you have a separate recorder for it. Okay, next slide. So the other difference as well is channels. So for example, the H6, which is I think also on screen, has 6 channels, which means has 6 inputs that allows to record 6 different tracks. So you'd have 1 track for your boom, and then if you have 2 lavaliers, 2 other tracks. The really good thing about this one is that it also has exchangeable capsules. So you can go from 4 options to 6 options, or stereo, and then it's just deciding which one you prefer, basically. So the F8 Zoom is the one I've been using mostly. It has 8 channels, also great. And then you've got the Tascam as well, which has 4 channels. So it's how much it's gonna, it's looking at your production, how many characters you have, how many entries you need, how many inputs, and then deciding. You're not, if you have 5 characters, you can't go with a recorder that has only 2 entries because you're not gonna be able to record, basically. Next slide. Okay, so if you're gonna, it also depends on the format itself. So it depends on your movements or how much you wanna move and in which space you're recording. So if you're going out and just recording birds, for example, singing, like you can use a handheld field recorder, right? It's just one of those recorders. That's okay, not too heavy, very easy to carry. If you're recording on set, a lot of characters, you normally need a dedicated field recorder, which would be the Zoom, for example. It's normally bigger, higher quality normally, and the thing is, it doesn't have any microphones attached, so you need to buy the separate gear. Whereas on the hand field recorder, it's there already. Next slide. Okay. So these are some technical terms that I'm going to try to explain really simply because they are very useful in post-production. And if you can sort this out and understand this, now it's going to be really helpful. So bit depth is basically how many times your sound wave is sampled. So sound works in sound waves, right? This is important because if you're recording with camera, a lot of times it only allows for 16-bit, so it's lower resolution. Whereas normally, if you record with an actual audio recorder, it's going to allow for more samples, more resolution, basically. 24-bit is kind of the standard. So this, if you're deciding on which option, that's going to help you. Next one, please. So then you've got quantization. So you're going to see when you're trying to buy a recorder, one of the options as well is going to be KHTZ. So normally, the latest generation, like DSLR cameras, would be 41 or around there. That's good quality, but normally the standard for sound would be 48, and that is normally with recorders. So again, dual system is normally better. It's made specifically for sound. This is how many samples happen per second, okay? Next slide. Frequency. So frequencies, hertz is the unit of frequency, basically. This is how many cycles of waves can happen per second. This applied to reality would be low frequencies travel longer, and then high frequencies travel less. And also in a room, for example, low frequencies will be able to go through the walls, whereas high frequencies would not. That's why, for example, when you're at a nightclub and you can hear everything perfectly, as you step outside and go away, all you can hear is doom, doom, doom. It's very low because the high frequencies have been lost. This is important as well because our voices have a different range of frequencies, right? So if you direct the mic even just the slightest bit out of that angle, you're already losing highs. So the voice is going to sound different, and then in post you're going to have to work more with EQ, for example. Okay. And for example, the humans hearing can go normally from 20 to 20,000 hertz, and sometimes lower frequencies, once you can't hear them, you can still feel them, because sound is still something that's happening around you. It's still vibrations, it's still molecules like hitting each other. It's just that your ear can't translate that sound, but it's still happening. Next. That's what I was talking about, how it travels. Musicians talk about it as high pitch or low pitch. So the wavelength, you can see that one is smaller and more happen in 1 second than like a lower pitch. Okay, next slide. So basic settings on your recorder. Long story short, normally look so that the entries are mic level. It has happened to me, same with phantom power. Sometimes you are connecting everything, you start recording and you can't hear. And it's like everything is connected, you're checking what could go wrong. Normally it's either you haven't sent the phantom power we were talking about to the shotgun, so there's no way it can work, even if it's connected, or that you don't have selected a mic level entry for your microphones. So that's just a hack in case it happens to you. Next slide. You're gonna be seeing, okay, once you've maybe you can take a look at the recorder if somebody wants to take it. Anybody wants to take it, to take a look? Yeah, you wanna take a look? So it's connected to this. You can help each other pass it around to take a look. So once you've connected everything and it's sending phantom power and sound is basically entering the recorder, if there's any issues, just tell me as well. So you're gonna start seeing little charts moving up and down. That's the pressure, the sound pressure entering your device. So these are measured in decibels, so in dBs. Decibels depend on context, and they are different. For example, a jet plane is 150 decibels, and then a home is 60, but then again, like that depends on your home. For example, my home maybe is louder, you know, if there's more people, you know, or if you live alone, it's less. So it depends on context, and it's also different for every person. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is what you would be seeing. So I believe this is the one for the H6, which is the one they have. So it can be entering either like showing a chart going up and down or side to side. Normally, you want to go in between -12 and -6. That would be your top where you want to stay when you're recording. So how you would do that is, and that's why you need to talk to assistant directors, for example, to ask for time to do this. Take your actors for a moment and have them talk about whatever. It doesn't matter. Get them talking, and then you take that time to set the levels. Maybe somebody has a very powerful voice. It's different for everyone, so every track is gonna have different gains. So you wanna make sure that you do that beforehand. Because what you're trying to avoid, next slide, please. You're trying to avoid clipping. So clipping is basically a nightmare. And it's when there's so much sound pressure that has entered your recorder that it says stop, basically. It's like, if you notice here, you can see where it is here in the middle, because it's as if it cut, basically. The information was too much, so we lost. There's a threshold, and anything above that is lost. So to avoid that, you set the good the levels you need for each actor. And that's also why we record with not only lavalier, but also boom. You need to have a backup option. And if you're operating boom and doing the microphones and sound mixing at the same time, it's normal that you can't change the levels fast enough for all the actors if, for example, one of your actors screams all of a sudden. Because it works when they are talking about like what they had for breakfast with you as you are setting it up, but on scene, things happen, stuff changes, and there's emotion. So they will go really loud at some point, and you maybe don't have time to change it, so it might clip. So if you have your boom pole and you learn a little bit of the dialogue and you are a little bit ahead of them, you will be able to pull a little bit to the other side, move a little bit further from them when you know that they're gonna speak louder, and avoid, again, that clipping. Don't leave it for post. If it clipped, it's gonna show red on your recorder. Say it, ask to record again. It's just not good to edit it. Next slide, please. Okay, so moving to production. Next, please. First of all, safety of the gear. So I'm gonna let you like grab anything you want, like try anything you want. Just be careful with it, basically, like you would be careful with anything. I'd say one thing that's pretty important is to test your gear beforehand. So especially if, that's true for anything, especially if you're renting it, make sure you test it in front of the people you're renting it. Make sure everything's working so that if there's an issue, it wasn't you. Also test all the cables, all the connections, and I normally bring, if there's the budget, double of everything. So if I need one XLR cable, I bring two. If I can bring double of like other cables, I also do that. What's your gear? No, sorry. Yeah, what's your gear? The thing is, for example, you level your microphone, you're gonna put on an actor. The actor is gonna have a piece of your gear that they can just walk away with. So if you don't pay attention, it's normal that they don't think of it, right? So things like going to the bathroom, where it could potentially fall. Things like when we wrap the set, everybody's excited, and a lot of actors are just eager to go home. They leave. You don't have time to turn off your audio recorder. You realize your set is gone. So just like pay attention, because it's, yeah, just a piece of your gear is there with them. And you can just go up to them beforehand and tell them, listen, if there's any issue, just tell me. I can do it, I can handle it, just come to me, I'll touch basically the gear myself. Test the gear, wrap cables. So does anybody want to demonstrate? I think you can do it. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so I need to put this down. So how to properly wrap cables. Don't be nervous. There's different ways. It's basically anything that's not that, but like that's very easy. There you go.
Ideally not be hitting it off the floor.
There you go. Perfect. So if
That's a bit haphazard, but
so if you guys want to have a try, if you want to distract yourselves with this. Okay, nobody's trying. You can like, please, somebody try. Kate wants to try. I think you did it the normal, the simple way, which I normally do. There's also the, what's it called? Over-under.
I'm supposed to do it right or wrong?
Do it right. Do you know how to do the over-under? Okay, so what she's doing really fast and can do slower, she does a normal one first, and then there's the under, which basically is like a double kind of loop. You know?
Which camera? Because I have 3 cameras, so which camera? Sorry, we are doing a show here.
So there you go. There's different ways. So does somebody want to try this type? Anybody? We're not judging. Sorry, I can't curse. But like I messed up so much like the first times as well, so don't worry.
And sometimes when the cable is already kinky,
That's
you won't get it.
That's the thing. That's the thing. So it's important to know, for example, how to wrap your cables to always keep your gear, for example, close to you. Because that's another thing. Avoid cables on the floor. You're moving, camera's moving. If cables are on the floor, you can't just go like this, because then you're messing up your own job because you're making noise. So you want to have them either with like, I normally wear belts for when I'm doing sound, so I can put it there, or I hold it even in my arm, just as long as I have them well wrapped up, safe, not on the floor. They move with me, you know, I don't have to change my movements because of it. So there's, I think I saw a person online doing it like. No, that's okay. I think it was like, if you grab it then like this, it feels like more natural. Like, I don't know how they did it, but they were doing it in a way that it felt more natural once you grabbed it like that. I think it was like this, because you turn it. Yeah, you know, you turn it like that.
So,
Sorry, so it feels, there's a technique.
so you'd grab. Yeah.
Go ahead. Adam's gonna
You
demonstrate.
grab it a comfortable amount, and then you bring it over the first way. And what I do is I actually grab the next one reversed. I'm just doing it backwards now.
Yeah.
And I'm bringing it in backwards, same way Kate did. And then the next one is, just loosen it up, normal. It's all twisted. And then the next one is over under again. It's a bit loose, and then there. So the whole idea is when you do over under and you throw it across the floor, it'll come out completely like straight, and they're less likely to get like twisted and all damaged.
So probably they weren't wrapped up properly if they're really twisted now, but nobody dares to do. Oh, okay, there you go. Somebody there. So yeah, mainly is avoid cables on the floor, watch your gear, test the gear, how to wrap cables, and also your boom pole. Don't lean it against stuff because it falls. So if it falls with the microphone, the greater distance it falls, the more the damage. So normally, if you want to leave it somewhere, leave it either on the floor with stuff around it, or yourself around it, or even just hold it. Normally, I just hold it like that's the main pose when like I'm shooting, just like holding it, because yeah, no, leaning is not good. Okay, people are doing great. Okay, next slide. You can keep trying, no problem. So some recording basics. So you're gonna want to, for example, I give you just ideas. Like you can look at the settings actually now on here. Just play with it a little bit. I don't know if this one has batteries. I think it should have batteries. Before you get on set, part of pre-production could be actually setting up, doing all the settings you need for the shooting. So for example, normally what I do, because it's all about economizing time and energy in the end. So normally what I do, I set up, for example, my headphones with, on one side I have lavaliers and on the other side I have the boom. That means that if I hear an issue, I can just listen and already cancel out, be like, okay, it's not the boom, it has to be the lavaliers. So this saves me time, for example. Or if I don't want to listen to the boom right now, I just get rid of one of the headphones and just listen on the other one. So that's an easy one. Then it's important also how to mute, learn how to mute people. Actors run off and go to the bathroom. You don't want to hear it. You know, it's just easy. It's handy to be able to just, yeah. And then on the other side, there's people who forget they are mic'd up and they just talk about their life and whatever. And there's people who know that they are, who want to, yeah, I get it. I want to respect your privacy. I normally always mute it. But there's actors who actually mute it themselves. That's a problem because then you record, and if you haven't paid attention, you suddenly notice, okay, we're recording, everybody's ready, and there's one track that's not working. So you can actually set up on your transmitters or on your recordings that you can't, so that the actors can't do that. So it's also handy to know all these options that you have to avoid any issues. Name tracks, that's also important. As we, same thing we said about talking with the editor beforehand and deciding how to name tracks. Normally, that's an example, for example, that I use back in Spain. I don't know how you use it here, but just the scene, the shot, and the take. Now, this would be for a scene of dialogue, but then you record different stuff, okay? You would record wild tracks, ambience, bus tracks, room tone. All of them are different sounds you might get on set. For example, wild track. Wild track would be anything, a specific sound that needs to be synced. So you need to record it on location if you can't. A specific sound, like for example, even just the laughter or a sigh, or something that you see on scene, and it's better to do it there. So you record that. That's a wild track, and you could put like WT take one, for example, and the specific name of it. It's all so that you don't have to listen to all the audio again in post-production to figure out what it was, because you'll have hours of audio, and if you have to figure it out which one is the good take of somebody sneezing, like, you know, it takes a long time, so just write it down, sort it. Then we've got ambience. Ambience is, for example, if we have a scene with dialogue in a restaurant, the dialogue would be whatever your characters are saying. The ambience would be people talking around them. So you would record that separately. That's why, for example, if you've ever been in a shooting where they shoot a scene at a nightclub, is the most awkward thing ever. Silent dancing, you can hear the shoes, like it's really awkward, and you can only hear the actors talking because it's all fake, you know, it's film. So it's all recording the pieces of audio separately. So if somebody screams, you want to have that scream separately. You want to have everything individually so that you can then play with it in post-production. What do I want louder? What do I want less? For dialogue to not overlap as well, for example. Okay, then bus track would be other specific sounds that don't need to be in sync. So for example, I don't know, at a restaurant, the sound of a refrigerator, you can just, you know, that's a Foley if you want. You can find it from a sound library. That's not a big issue. Room tone. Room tone was one of the hardest things for me to learn how to ask at first. It's what you do at the end of a shooting, basically. For each location you record, you want the sound of the silence of the room, basically. The nobody moving, nobody talking, but everybody there. So you want everything how it was, but no action happening. And you want to record that for at least 2 minutes, but that depends on scenes. There's scenes where I've had to do 5 minutes, and it's hard because, I think you know, it's hard because everybody's tired, everybody wants to go home, and you have to tell them, okay, now we all sit here quietly, can't wrap up any gear, we just have to record. That's why it's important as well to talk beforehand with assistant director and be like, okay, I will need 2 minutes in every location to do that. And then everybody knows already. Yeah.
Is that an auto-generated file? Sorry, is that an auto-generated file name up there? Is that what that is?
So you can, yeah, you can change it. The take number, the T001, is normally in most recorders auto-generated, so it keeps happening. But everything before it, you can change. Okay. Yeah, so you can play with it. And normally, if you put, for example, scene 1, if you write them down beforehand, you can. There's an option where you can write the different options beforehand, so that when you change takes, you just select your format. So it's better than just have to write every time differently. Then you're doing sound, so you'll need to understand noise. There's different noises. You've got controllable noise and uncontrollable noise. What could controllable noise be, for example?
Anything in the room that you can change.
Yeah.
Like if it's uncontrollable, it's like you're recording in a house. But you're
Oh my God.
busy. Oh.
Sorry.
So controllable noise would be anything that is in the room that you can change. If something doesn't sound right, you can move it around or do whatever you want with it. Whereas if it's uncontrollable, it's like cars outside. You can't really do anything about that, so you have to be aware of those things.
Yeah. So that's why, for example, we say like on set to not have like notifications on or to have airplane mode. You're trying to control the noises you can. And then you've got other uncontrollable sounds, which honestly you could also control by thinking about it in pre-production. So if an uncontrollable sound, I hate this word, is like an plane passing by, then you don't want to shoot next to an airport. Okay, so there's certain things you can control. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, we're gonna talk about putting up lavaliers, and you can try it out. But I just wanted to mention one thing before. I think we don't talk about it a lot, but consent in this job is really important. I've created really close relationships with actors because you get really close to them, right? And I've seen a lot of sound recordists or sound assistants just go up and like take a t-shirt off of an actor and just put it up. And that's very violent. And I think we see it as just part of the job, but like we're human in the end. So we need a little bit of, hi, hello, can I do this? So I would say, especially working with kids as well, you want to teach people, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Can I do it? There's people who've said, no, I'm really uncomfortable if like you put the mic here, because normally you put the mics here, like either in the brow or between the chest. You just teach them how to do it. They go somewhere, they do it themselves. It's just having this little bit of attention that makes things easier. And like in a lot of jobs, I've been called to do a lot of jobs because the actors remembered me, because they felt comfortable, not because anybody else. So it's just having this little bit of attention for people. Okay, next slide. So accessories for lavaliers. If we have, I'm going to talk about low budget ones then, okay? This is ideal if you want to invest in them. They are amazing, okay? Basically, with lavaliers, they are put in between layers normally. So they're the sound, the noises that your clothes make are going to affect it. So it's what we were saying before. Make sure it's not leather, for example. Make sure it's not rubber. It's going to be more difficult. But even so, they have created different types of accessories to change that. So you have your lavalier microphone, for example, and one of the options is these stickers. They're basically two-sided stickers, which you put on one side of the lavalier, and you've got these little flurry things, which are called overcovers. They come in different colors depending on the clothes you're using, and they also, it's like you make a little sandwich of your lavalier, and you protect it, basically. You also can get concealers, which are just like capsules made specifically for that. And then one thing, I'd say this you can do with like cheaper little hacks, I can tell you, but there's belts and bands are actually really, really helpful. You have to remember you're not only hiding your lavalier, you're also hiding the transmitter, which is what's harder sometimes, especially if it's big transmitters. Like I've been working with the Sennheiser ones, for example, and they're pretty heavy. And it's okay, for example, if somebody is wearing like trousers and a shirt, that's perfect. You can just hide it in the rear pocket, whatever. But if an actress is wearing like a really short dress, then it's a problem, or where to hide it. So that's why like ankle bands or like waistbands, it's really helpful, comfortable for them as well to hide it. Next slide. So actually, if you want to try to do this with one of them, it's basically, I can't talk into this and do that, but it's basically, you take one of them. I've never really used this thing. You put it on one side, and then on the actor's chest, like under, it would be under, but you put it here, and with one of them, I would choose white, for example, you put it on top. So it's like a little sandwich, basically. That's how you have it. That would be if you have this. If you don't have it, this is what it would look like sometimes under somebody's shirt when they are mic'd up. The little loop around the cable is really important. Very simple. I don't do it for every take because sometimes it shows on the clothes, but it basically prevents noise from the cable itself to travel up to the mic. So anything you do to the cable under that loop is not going to affect. So you don't need to worry about that. Then very interesting also to use alcohol wipes on the part you're going to mic up because it gets rid of like oil, so natural oil of the person. That means everything sticks longer. You need to make sure about allergies and everything beforehand. Obviously, that's why it's also important not only to get consent, but to learn about the actor a little bit. Be like, is your skin very sensitive? If their skin is very sensitive, normally I use medical tape under it before I tape anything else, because it's made specifically for that. So just talk to them. The same thing I've done here with this fancy whatever, you can do with gaff tape, basically. You can do it by, and I leave the mic again. You take a piece Or if somebody wants to hold the mic, you can be boom operator.
Yeah.
So you take a bit of it and you fold it in little triangles like this, pretty loose so that it has space. And then you do it for another one, and you can do the same thing to your lavalier. So you would put one here and the other one on the other side, and it works the same. What you need to make sure is that you leave enough air in the capsule. So don't put it like this, put it a little bit out, basically. So that's a good trick. This is not specifically gaffer tape, but like it works as well. Thank you. So if somebody wants to try, if you guys want to try, because it saves you a lot of money, basically. So you might want to do that. Then what else? Yeah, different color gaffer tape. That's also interesting. It doesn't need to be gaffer tape. It can be something else. But I normally use it to name the transmitters. And so, for example, I put this actor, I have it on channel 1. So then if there's an issue, especially when you have a lot of sets of lavaliers and everything, you want to know fast enough how many, like who's the problem, basically. And also, this looks really simple and really like just clear, but once there start to be cables around it, it can get messy. So it's just this organization part that's important. Yeah, go ahead. So these are some options you have. You can try it out. I also found this tape that was pretty cheap, or maybe somebody gave it to me. But it's actually very useful. It feels almost like, would you call this fabric? I don't know how to say it. But just with a little tiny bit of this, I've been able to stick the mic without anything else, and it doesn't make any noise as well. So it's just testing out then, like, as long as you don't destroy the lavalier mic and the skin of the actor, like as long as you follow these guidelines, like, you can test out how to stick the microphone however you kind of want. Okay, next slide. So this is, honestly, if I could do something in sound, I think I'd just focus on like hiding microphones because it's so much fun. Normally, 80-90% of the time, it's going to be the chest. So you want to put it right where you're looking for natural cages, basically, for natural like cavities where you can create distance between the person's skin and their clothes. So if you look here, a natural like cage would be in between here. So that's why normally the sternum is that how you call it? There you go. That's where you normally put it. It's also very clear. The voice is happening here. But then if the actor wears a bikini, or if the actor wears a dress, or anything, depending on how wide the shot is as well, maybe you can't put it here. Maybe the clothes they have are impossible to deal with in terms of texture, in terms of fabric. So then you are gonna have to get creative and like hide it in places like in accessories, like hats work, glasses work as well. It's really good to hide it. If your actress is wearing, or your actor is wearing wigs, that's great as well. I did an amazing film with drag queens. It was amazing because they had huge wigs. I could hide the transmitter and the lavalier and probably the camera in it as well. Like, it was great. So as long as you're asking beforehand, that's why you also talk to the makeup department. You don't want to mess up their wigs. You don't want to mess up anything. You don't want to just go in there, and the dresses as well. So if beforehand you learn in pre-production that there's a very complicated dress, you can build specific pockets to hide your transmitters, for example. Or for example, in the boots, I've put like a lot of transmitters inside boots, but that's only if there's enough space. So you need to talk about it before as well. Ties as well. That's really good. You want to put it on the knot of the tie normally. That's like the cavity that I was talking about, looking for these like cages. Also, if there's shirts, for example, you want to put it in between the buttons as well. So if you want to try out mic up each other with only one mic, but see for each clothing. For example, your clothes, where would it be better to put the mic? Yeah. So there's enough space for it to breathe. It's not a bad texture. It's good. Something more like. Sorry. Sorry.
Can you put the mic on the back side, like on the? Let's say the artist
Yeah.
is shirtless or topless.
Yeah.
Can you put the mic on the back side of the person?
So normally, if it's shirtless, I would look for a space in the scene. So I would look for a prop or something I can hide it, because behind, you're losing a little bit. You're losing a lot. What you can do is hide it in the hair, for example. That's one option, and then the cable goes behind. That also depends on how they're going to be shooting him. So if it's from the front, yeah, then you have a problem. But you can. It's a challenge. It's interesting. But for example, yeah, it's interesting what you say. Normally, the mic you hide wherever. For example, the chest. The cable and the transmitter is what I found are actually more problematic because are bigger to hide. What you normally do when you put your microphone here, you don't leave it loose, because then the cable, you have it here, it also creates noise. You need to have it tight. So you normally put it around the chest and going back, for example. And then you have it back connected to the transmitter. So it's you follow the clothes, you follow the body of the person. I don't know, that was a good question. Do you have other situations where we could figure out where we could hide it? Yeah. Yeah, sorry.
If it's a close-up shot, you could just have it lower on the
Yeah.
chest as well. That's where you work with the camera and see what is in view and anywhere you can hide it out of frame.
Yeah. So that's true. For example, I was shooting a scene with an actress that had her dress up to here. It was open, sure, like you could see all the cleavage and everything, and like it was impossible to hide it, so to hide the transmitter. So I put the mic up here going down, and then I knew they were going to shoot her only from this side, so the transmitter was completely visible on this side. So, but it looked weird, but not on camera. So you kind of fake it like that as well. I don't really see any problems. Your jacket would be a problem, for example, maybe. And then also accessories. Accessories are really important when I was talking about makeup and costumes. If they have a necklace that's really loud, they make specific necklaces that are not noisy. The same way they even make specific paper bags that are not noisy. So it's just to help out, basically. Earrings as well. Yeah, anything that could be, even really, really loud shoes. You're also going to record probably the steps in post-production. So just everything be pretty toned down and easy to control. I don't know if you want to try with your tape to tape it on someone. You don't have to put it under the shirt, but like you can try. You all have a bit, right? So you want to try it on Adam, sorry. So for example, if Adam has the button shirt, imagine, can you button it up? Yeah. So if he has it like this and this is the only thing he has, a good idea would be to put it in between the buttons. So you'd have the mic, you can do it. Yeah, you'd hide it in between the buttons. So it's like it leaves a little bit of space again. Then I can't really see. If you have a lot of layers on, you don't have a lot of layers, but like imagine you had more jackets on, you want to put the mic as close to the mouth as possible, because then if not, you can hear like really muffled. So normally if you have a lot of layers, even if you have a scarf, then you can put it like on top of the scarf. And if the scarf is dark, like maybe you can even like have it a little bit outside. If they wear a hat, then it's better to put it in the hat and then down. That's what we were saying about it's omnidirectional, so it picks up a lot. Behind your neck would be maybe too much, but here a lot as well. That's pretty good. That works. Next slide, please. Okay, now boom operating. So you can, where's my other boom? I have one here and one there, yeah. So you will have you'll probably stand up, guys, to try this out. I'm just gonna give you different techniques. Like how would you hold it, for example? How would you? Okay. Okay, so that's one option. That's one option. It's all about how it works for you. There's no really, I mean, I'm gonna talk in a moment about physical well-being when it comes to operating sound. So there's certain things I'll talk about. But normally, as I said, it's very directional microphones. You wanna make sure you're pointing towards the actor's mouth or a little bit under. Just as long as it's around where the voice would happen, you know? It's not omnidirectional like the lavalier microphones, like we were saying. So, for example, if I'm the actor and I'm talking, you'll have to follow me if I move, because if I'm here, that's already, you're losing so much. So one thing I noticed and that I was a little bit scared of, I was in a production where they asked me not to look at the actors. And I was like, oh, how am I supposed to know then, like, if I'm pointing correctly? But then I kind of caught myself saying, oh, well, it is sound. So if I can train my ear to notice when it's out of this angle. And actually, if you're mixing at the same time as your operating boom, you will have to rely a lot on your ear. So test that out as well, you know, have fun, like trying to reach your limits or whatever, like learning this. I normally have like an imaginary line that I think of when I'm trying to direct the boom. So I try to look for this imaginary line from the top of the tip of the microphone to the actor's chest or mouth. So this as well you can have if you want. Learning dialogue is also a really important thing. You don't need to know it as much as the actors, but if you can, it's even better. So the way you operate boom, lavalier you forget about. I mean, you check the levels, you check that there's no rustle, there's no problem, but you're not changing anything about the mic. Once you've placed it, you've placed it. Boom microphone, you need to move with the actors, which means that if a scene has two actors, for example, if them two are talking to each other, I'll have to move from him to him all the time, right? So if I don't know the dialogue, I'll go even just 1 second later, because I'll be like, okay, have you finished? Oh, okay, now you, okay. If you know the dialogue and know cues, for example, know that when he says green, then he responds, it's easier. There's obviously things that are gonna happen, improvisation, but like once you have experience, that's no problem too. Also, you wanna think about the sound pressure that every voice makes. So if his voice is louder and his voice is more toned down, I will not be at the same distance for both. So I will probably be, if you're louder, further from you and closer to you, so that when I move like this, I don't have to change my levels because I'm changing it like physically, like in the moment. Next slide, please. Okay, stay out of the frame. I tried to put this together because I looked online for pictures of staying out of the frame and there was not. So you want to stay out of the frame, yeah? You want to know the limits before you shoot. So I would probably like ask camera, okay, can I have a second? I go in as much as I want, and then I ask them to tell me, I slowly go up and ask them to tell me when it's okay. Then I normally look for a reference. So I look for a reference in the space, not actors, not things that can move. Your reference cannot leave. So for example, if I need to shoot Alyssa, I will look at that sign behind me and know that that's when I enter the frame. So I will stay there, I will know that. And when they say, okay, back to your positions when you finish the take, I don't have to ask the camera again where I am, because I already know it's there. So just doing that on every location saves time for everyone. So that weird tree would be a reference. And here, for example, you go, like the boom operator goes up because it's really the best option they have. If they went this side, they wouldn't get close enough. Under, they could go under as well. Just once you have the frame and the limits, you can see which way you pick it up better. So next slide, Actually, oh, and I almost forgot, pay attention to your shadows as well. It's not only the frame, it's not only your boom microphone and yourself, but also the shadows you make. And in a lot of shots, I had a great angle, and I wasn't being shown, like actually, but there was a long black shadow there, and then you have to change it again. So I try to think in thirds like you would for camera sometimes when you're trying to understand where to put your microphone, right? So if you think in thirds and you have your character who's speaking there, you will know that it's in this side that the sound pressure is. And then then you look if she's gonna be talking looking up or looking down. So if she's talking looking down, you can just be on the other side of that wall and literally have your mic up to her mouth and not be shown in camera. So it's just thinking of these situations. Next slide. So for example, here, where would you put the mic? What would be an option, for example, to put the mic? So between. So here you have enough space that you can actually, depending on light, go over or under. So under, I found that most times it's really comfortable because it's less exhausting as well. So it's just, yeah, different options. If you were to put it here, you would lose him, right? You would have a really strong voice for him, but only on one side, and lose him completely. So the middle is perfect. Next slide. Okay, this is where we're all gonna practice, and it's very important. I mean, we're not like superheroes, like our bodies like suffer from the consequences of holding a boom pole for a long time. It's okay if it's a 1 hour, but once you've been holding it for like 10 hours, like you're tired, you're exhausted. And so some tips. First of all, quality headphones. I'd say if you want to invest in a piece of gear, invest in good headphones. Like you're working with your hearing. I've noticed that like once I've started working and I did not follow this piece of advice, I've lost like a lot of hearing. And a good piece of headphones, you know, that are comfortable as well, like make sure you don't get like too sweaty. They are what you need to work. They are like, you're part of the gear, and sometimes we forget about it. And I've operated sound with earphones, and it's terrible. And like you also lose a lot of information, and then you go to post-production and you're editing with good speakers, and you're like, what did I record? Because you heard it differently. So that's one. Then good posture. Okay, so for example, when you hold this mic, one thing that you did, for example, was that you took out like this, right? So when you attach a boom mic, I don't know how much weight is a boom mic. Like I don't know how much it would be. Okay, like 3 kilo maybe. What? 500? It depends on how much, like if you have a case or whatever, like whatever, let's say 500 grams. That's nothing. But the further it is from you, the heavier it is. And so if you take out all the extensions, so you see here you have 1, 2, 3, 4. If you take out all the arms, that means you're holding even more weight. So like it's easy just to go with first just 1, then 2, then 3. Like it's like you were saying 500 grams, but it can end up being like 4 kilo if you're holding it like too much distance and with all the arms extended if you don't need it. So that's one thing that's there you can try out that basically I learned. Do the smaller ones first. Yeah, do the smaller one first and then extend from the smaller ones basically. Then another thing, when you're holding your mic, for example, try to stay with your elbows as close to your ribs as you can. That means that you're having support from your ribs and you don't have to rely only on your arms or your back. So you're staying close and you operate. If you are operating from the top, yeah, perfect. So this is, I actually never use this posture, but a lot of people use it and like seems to work. You can put, I've seen people put like pillows on their neck as well, as long as it's not really noisy, like anything that can help you. Perfect. So if you do this, for example, if you're extending it up, make sure your arms are not like this. This is exhausting. Make sure they are pretty, I actually don't know the term for this. Yeah, basically like this. Your chest is wide open and your arms are like vertical to the ground. And then if you need to take it down, you go closer with your ribs. Like these sound like really silly little tips, but like honestly, they make such a difference when you have to shoot even for just 5 hours and on the long run as well. So if you want to all try like different ways of doing it. One thing I also noticed by operating, oh, great, there you go. By operating and mixing levels at the same time as I'm operating boom, is that I can just do this. And like this was such a discovery for me. It's so comfortable. I just operate like this, and I'm mixing at the same time. So you just mix it up like, and you look cool. So there you go. You can try as well. So for example, as well, yeah, perfect. Mm-hmm. Sorry? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, you can extend it if you want a little bit. Great. So you figure out what's easier for you. It's not that by making it simpler is like more lazy or whatever. It's actually finding what's more effective. So if I used to make the stupid mistakes of being used to like seeing people operate with all the boom extended and going super far away and having a close shot, like a close-up of somebody and me operating from the other side and just being like, yeah, like I'm doing it right. You don't need it. You can even just take the shotgun without the boom pole and be there. Like just make sure that you're economizing your energy and you're saving it as much as you can. And stretch also beforehand. Like I think, same way when you're operating a Steadicam, you need to stop at some point and you have somebody who holds it for you when you're dying, you don't even have breath, okay? It's exhausting and you need breaks for that as well. So, yeah, there you go. So it's the same thing, maybe the weight, it is a lot of weight. But even like the more you put on the camera, for example, if I know somebody is doing Steadicam, I will try to avoid putting stuff on the camera and actually either hold it myself or try to attach it somewhere else. Because even if it's just like 500 grams, you are adding it and adding it and adding it and holding it for a while and it gets exhausting. And just make sure people work comfortably. Okay. So holding it under is really cool as well. I love that. Like it's so comfortable. It's just you're just there. You're like, okay, talk. That's good. That's a really good one. And you can get, as long as you listen and it sounds good, you can really do anything. So the extensions I told you about, light stands, they are great. So if you have, for example, documentary filmmaking, if there's long interviews, you don't want to be holding the boom pole for 15 minutes. You end up hating the person, the topic, everything, okay? You just want them to shut up. So that's where in pre-production, if you got budget, you can ask for either specific sound stands or normally just a light stand, like a C stand. Works well. That's why also you want to talk to camera in so many sets. I haven't thought of that beforehand. You go up to camera, you're like, hey, like to gaffers, you're like, hey, do you have like some spare ones? Can I just use one please for this take? They're like, yeah, no problem. Okay, you use it for the take. You set your boom pole there. You don't need to move it. That's as long as the actor doesn't move a lot, you can just like leave it there. So I love it.
Don't have much movement, so it's like you can just set it up.
Yeah. Yeah. As well, for example, car scenes. So the first car scene I did, I had, again, it's all about understanding the dynamics of the job. So for me, the shotgun was always attached to the boom pole. So even when I went inside a car, I was like, no, but like the boom pole has to fit. But it was like, what's the use for it? But it never crossed my mind. So it can't fit. So then you just, it has to be an asset. It has to be something that serves you. If it doesn't serve you and it's just a bother, then you don't use it. So in a car scene, for example, you can be hiding. I've been hiding like with people on top of me and everything, and you're just like directing the mic yourself. So you can do that as well. Next slide. Okay, so some issues that can happen with boom, mainly it's sound from the boom itself. So for example, you'll have a cable, normally an XLR cable attached that would go around it. If it's really loose, it's gonna hurt, you're gonna hear all the time. And like, sometimes it takes time before you figure out that it's this. So you would wanna tie it pretty close. And to do that, normally I hold my boom pole like this, and I just go like that, and make sure it's tied. And once you have it, you hold it with one hand. So normally, one other problem is that if you hold your boom pole really in the middle, and you forget about the little tip at the back, you're gonna bump into things, and you're suddenly in the middle of a take gonna hear bang, and you can't blame it on anyone but yourself. So you wanna, normally I have one hand holding this part, so like this. So I would have the cables going from up, down, here, and then have it nicely wrapped up, like we've learned, and then just hold it. So that's one way. Also, if the different arms or extensions are not properly locked, they can also move, like the boom could like move without you wanting to. And then the different accessories that you have, I'm just gonna leave it. The different accessories you have can also cause noise if the microphone itself is not adjusted properly. So for example, we've got, this is a blimp. I also, correct me if I pronounce anything wrong, because I've learned these terms in English for the first time now. So this is, turns out it's a blimp, and it protects wind. Now, again, I used to think it was really fancy to like have it all the time, and I would have it also for indoors. That's heavier, bigger shadow, unnecessary. So if you don't need it, don't use it. The microphone goes inside this. So if the microphone is not adjusted properly, it will bump into the walls. So you will hear like the clicking, basically, and it's from this itself. Some of these phone windscreens, is that how you call it, phone windscreen? There you go. They have sizes. If they don't fit perfectly your microphone, you can also hear the rustle, and that's a really annoying noise to get rid of. And the dead cat, I mean, that's the same. I know, it's the same in Spanish, like, yeah. Normally that doesn't really make any noise. Like, normally that's pretty chill. And really comfortable to sleep on set as well. Then I think, yeah, that's mainly some of the issues that can come up. I don't know from experience, you guys, if there's other issues that have come up, if there's any tricks, hacks that you've learned operating boom. Anything? I've seen people with wireless boom poles, like shotguns. So you can do that, and then some people have actually operated with such systems. I've never tried it. It would be good, but it would have to be really well adjusted, because again, if then it moves inside and you can't really change it, it could be a problem as well. But normally, if you tie it enough, it's not a problem. Like if you tie it well enough around it, it's good. Sorry, go ahead.
If you're using one of the larger recorders, like, is that a field recorder? Is that what that's called? I can't remember.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, so with, like, are you carrying that, or is it on the ground, or is it on a stand, tripod, or like where is it being? Yeah.
So that depends as well on your budget and on the production. So for example, when I've been in commercials, which have normally a big budget, they have literally like stands that you can carry around with wheels and all, and you've got all your little devices there and you can move with it. You don't have to carry it. When there's no budget, you normally wear one of the, I don't know if you noticed, there was like a little bag specific for the recorder. I think there's a small one here. So this would be for a small one, right? What's more important is these little things, because you can then put it here. normally when it's a recorder like the dedicated ones we saw, like the F8, which was like rectangular and was bigger, you normally carry it like around that's another thing about like physical well-being. If you have enough money to invest in like vests, there's like vests for like that you can just put on your recorder without anything else. And then you can get like a waistband where you can put all your lavaliers, like the receivers, and it's like you have it well spread out. Normally, if you don't have a budget, you just go with around your neck, and that could be bad for posture, but like sometimes it is this. Normally, I would never leave it on the floor, just because, especially if you're operating boom at the same time, because you can't physically reach it, and people can trip over it, people can break it as well. So normally I would always have it on me and try to balance how to hold the boom with one hand and then like the levels with the other one. The times I've been able to just do boom operator, happiest days of my life. Like, so simple, I don't even operate, I just need to listen. That's all I do. I listen, I do the angle, and somebody else is operating and making sure the audio is not clipping and everything.
I was on set yesterday, they had two sound operators because the guy couldn't with his ears, so it was so handy for the two of them. Yeah. One had the level and the headphones, the other one had the boom. And I was like, if you could do that every time, it'd be handy.
Yeah, normally, like, that's why, like, sound, like, having being able to say there's a sound operator and a sound assistant, like, would be amazing. Also because sometimes you don't notice things, and when you're really stressed and having to carry a department by yourself, you cannot realize that actually the cable is not plugged, and you didn't notice. But if somebody's there and they're like, yeah, just calm down, and like, this is happening. So it's always better. I always try to be with someone else. So especially if you're going to try it for Kino, try, you know, even if you're, I know there's always a lot of actors, for example, even like you can act in one film and then maybe be sound assistant on the other. Like get that experience. Like, it's honestly, sound is also seen as like this technical thing, like camera, but just because we forget that film is a craft and there's balance in like technical and creative side. But don't be scared, like with the frequency, the bit depth, or all the little terms that we've talked about. Like, it will make sense now in post-production. Okay, so anybody else wants to try anything? Try the boom, you're good. Everybody has on the postures. Yeah.
You might cover this later, but whatever you did so far is amazing, but most of us would be working on smaller shoots. So what's the minimum you can get away with to get it, even on this weekend?
Yeah. Oh my God, that's so loud. So the gear, you mean?
Gear and technique.
Yeah. So the basic setup I told you about, you need a microphone, you need an audio recorder, and then you can have lavalier or whatever. Normally, as I said, ideal would be lavalier and boom, but you can get away with boom as well, as long as you operate, you know, properly. If you follow your ears and what you hear, you can normally, you don't mess up, because you're gonna notice things. And also, like, there's YouTube, which is really helpful. I won't show you post-production, like actually doing it, because it would take much more time. And I actually thought it was more interesting to tell you things that I've experienced, like firsthand, and that you can struggle more finding online. I'll also like put up this presentation so that you have it if you need it. So you have this. Yeah, just the basic setup. Is there anything in terms of what we've practiced that was not clear? Is there anything that you wouldn't know how to handle? If you need like any costumes, anything. Like, I'll also give you my contact so you can talk to me if you're on set and you're having an issue. But yeah.
I'm completely new to sound, so I'm completely new to sound. So when you're recording with the boom and you're recording with the lavalier, post-production, how do you know which, like, you're basically like slating it or whatever, the same scene, so you know what's on the lavalier, what's on the boom, and then you choose? Is that, so you basically almost have two recordings almost of everything? Okay.
So the thing is, that's why it's important, for example, to name tracks. And that's why you, especially if you're starting out, the more easily organized you have it, the more well organized you have it, the more specifically named you have it, the less panic in post-production. So normally lavalier mics are very, since they are very close to each person, you will know exactly, if I record, for example, with a lavalier mic, him and him, when I listen in post-production, I will hear clearly which one is each, because when he talks, his lavalier will be super loud, clear, nice, and he will be more like, but that depends on also how close they are. I've edited fight scenes where they are close to each other, and I'm like, actually, like, who's talking, like which lavalier is which. So that's why if you name them and you just put lavalier, even the name of the person, then you don't have to do that extra effort in post-production. So that would be an option. And with the boom, you will notice, because it's you have a recording of that goes on all the time. So for example, in certain scenes, you will not have him, so you will not have his lavalier, but the boom is always there. So you'll normally see it's like the longest track is the boom, the ones that consistent for the whole film, and also the one where you hear both people like perfectly clear, and pick up sound from around sometimes as well. So actually, we're going to cover this now with post-production. So next slide. So I'm going to walk you through some softwares in case you're interested in what you work. I don't know, what do you work with mostly?
Reaper, mostly. I mostly use Reaper, which is basically like Pro Tools, but a free version, so it works great.
Okay.
Like, I know some sound engineers who, when they're recording people, you can get custom skins for Reaper, and they'll use Reaper but make it look like Pro Tools because it does all the exact same things, but musicians will go, oh, you're not using Pro Tools. Oh. So Reaper is great, and it's free, which is very handy, and it can do everything. Reaper, or EAPER.
See, that's I didn't even know this one. Yeah, go ahead, take my pen. You can, no problem. So I actually didn't know this one. But yeah, Pro Tools is basically right now would be the standard. Although it's moving a lot to DaVinci because it has everything in it. So yeah, let's look at some softwares. Next slide. Sorry, DaVinci. So basically, what changes really sometimes is even the design of it, because you can learn the basics in a free software, and then once you know the basics, once you know what you have to do, because if you don't even understand the workflow, you're gonna, even if you get a really expensive software, you're not gonna make the most of it, of the little differences that's why they change the price. So I would say start with a very cheap, even free software, and then once you know, do free trials of the rest and figure out which one works better. And maybe you I'll definitely use that one. So maybe end up with this. So DaVinci is moving towards this. Seems like more and more sound people I work with, sound designers, are using it, because since you're moving the session, since the video session is the same one as the color grading and is the same one as the sound, there's no problems of matching formats or anything, which is an issue with other programs sometimes. So it's just easier. Next slide. Then Audacity. I started playing with this when I was a kid and had no idea of sound. It's free, and I've noticed a lot of people use it in the start as well. It looks very Windows kind of 2009, I don't know. But it has everything you need, all the basics. So that could also be good to start.
I actually use that when I make music. I use that because it's free.
There you go.
And I kind of know how to use it over the years.
That's the thing. If you are able to master all the free plugins and options, then you will understand. Because a lot of things are, for example, you have a basic software, and then you pay for plugins. Plugins would be things to change specific aspects of the voice, for example, or equalizers, so on and so on. So you need to understand the basics first. Next, Adobe Audition. I've never used it. It looks cool with the colors, but I've never used it.
It comes with It comes with so many like great plugins. Like if it is really expensive, but if you get it, it has kind of everything you'll need, so you don't need to worry about plugins as much. So it is a good investment, and it works really, really well, especially with like video references. Like it matches things really, really well. It's very handy, so it's a good one.
Also, yeah, and also you want to look. There's programs that like there's some certain softwares that have a lot of sound library, like a sound library already in it. So that's also interesting, especially then it's royalty free. You don't have to worry about that. So that's one, great. Next, I believe it's Pro Tools. So Pro Tools, would be the standard. It's paid. I don't know if there's a free trial even, but you know, there's other ways. It's handy, it's great. It's the one I've worked with mostly. It's used in music post-production and film post-production as well. But honestly, the basics and the setups are the same. What's really interesting and the program that I really love is, next slide, is actually a plugin. There's many plugins, but these I've used with Pro Tools. So basically on Pro Tools, I would do the same, the first part of like cutting, like chopping up the audio, deciding where's the lavalier, where's the whatever. And then I would go here, which has a frequency spectrogram. And I'm very visual and it just works so much for me. Basically, what it does is it shows you the frequencies, so the high pitch and the low pitch, with darker or lighter tones. So if, for example, there was a dog barking and it was really loud, you're gonna see something here. Like, you're gonna see like a big, bright little dot. And you have options where you literally, as if it was a brush, just like get rid of it and like paint it out. You spend a lot of hours there. I've spent a lot of hours there, like cleaning up voice. It's really good because you can do everything visually. You can even see the clicks. Like, there's people who, when they talk, they a lot. You have to get rid of it. There's plugins. See, so plugins would be an option, which is called, for example, mouth declick. That's one of the plugins, for example. If you do it automatically, sometimes it gets rid of other frequencies, right? The same frequencies that would be. But you can also see it visually. And, you know, if you have enough time and they pay you, you can also, like, try to do it yourself. So it's just interesting to learn how to read different programs, different softwares, and see which one works better for you. Okay, next slide. So we go on to workflow. So if you understand the workflow, then you can use any software, basically. It changes for everyone. Like, you can, literally, if it's just you remember all the roles we saw? In post-production, there were like 7 different roles, and I don't even put all of them. Normally, you do it yourself, all of it. So the workflow, you decided yourself whatever works better for you. I'll tell you what I normally do and what people I've worked with normally do. So next slide, please. So first of all, organize your session. I sound like I don't know, but like it's really important to organize everything a little bit. When you get your session, for example, you're gonna get an AAX file or an OMF file, for example, from your editor, if you've recorded it differently. So if you record it with your camera, that's a totally different story. If you record it differently, you're gonna have a file for sound and the file they're editing. Normally, don't edit sound if they haven't given you the final final cut. Because I've done that. Sometimes I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna start like doing my work faster. I'll have more time, and then suddenly a week later they're like, oh, actually we changed everything, and you're like, okay, so now all the work I've done is stupid. So you want to edit it when the color graders start editing, and same with color grading. You can start working already on color palettes or on different stuff. You can do different templates. With sound, you can start collecting follies. You can start collecting, I don't know, doing like some ADR or whatever, but don't do too much so that if they change it, you're just wasting your time. So once the final cut is done and they send you the file, you open up your session and it will look like this, complete chaos. That's where you need to understand what you were saying, for example. If you haven't named your files, this is a nightmare. Like trying to find here what your lavalier is, if you have 5 characters, it's just like too much time. So you want to organize it. Normally, people organize it by dialogue, sound effects. Some people put ambience within sound effects as well, and music. So music I'm not going to talk about a lot because it's the job of the composer, so it's a different role to sound mixing, sound design. So next slide. So for this one, for this first phase of post-production, you will need to, this is where pre-production might be in your favor or against you. If you've already decided what to use and you've asked, for example, for timecode is amazing. It's basically digitally creating a digital timeline, timecode, basically, that you then connect your camera to your audio recorder. So if it's 6, like if it's 4 in the afternoon, you can like put another time, but it's going to be the same for the camera and the audio recorder. So then digitally, when you put it together, image and sound will be synced. So that's really important. Normally this, when they edit and they send you the files, it's already synced, but I normally always just test it because sometimes like some things like change like a tiny bit and then you can see it and you can hear it. And then the clapperboard, I know the clapperboard is like almost like a representation of film, and we sometimes don't know like what it's used for, but actually like the clapperboard would be to sync sound and image. So we edit with sound waves, as we saw, right? So if in the image suddenly there's the loud clap, there's going to be a spike up, and that's going to allow you to mix, to match and sync the image, the moment of the clap, with the spike. So, but that's, you know, if you can do timecode, do timecode. If you have the money for it, try it. You can also do it with software, like online, like apps. Like now there's almost for everything, there's apps. Even like the levels, the dB levels. I know Zoom, the brand, allows you to do it all on your phone. So you can be operating from your phone. You don't even need from your recorder. Or there's people who have their laptop and they're operating from the laptop. So normally they come with apps. So yeah, it just saves time because if you have to edit 20 minutes, and for each take, you have to like sync the image, the moment, like you lose your mind a little bit. So, so yeah, once you've got everything organized, I normally put colors to separate as well. Like it's just easier, you know. Then that depends. There's people like I've met people who like edit on like a screen that's like dark mode and everything is black and like the names are numbers and they still like know. So everybody develops their method. It's no judgment. I do colors. Okay, next slide. So you will have something that looks like this once it's organized. So you haven't gotten rid of anything. You have just organized it differently, which means that for every take, you will have different files. So it's what you were saying. You will have, if you have 3 lavaliers and a boom mic, you will have 4 tracks that are the same. It doesn't really show here, but the difference will be that the sound wave will be louder depending on who's speaking. So what you're gonna do now, it's very robotic kind of work. It's just cutting the pieces. So you're only gonna keep the talking parts. This is when you're doing dialogue. You're doing, remember the 4 aspects I said, or 3 aspects I said. You're gonna do them all separately on different tracks. So you're gonna wanna end up with 1 track per person who's talking, and boom pole, and then the other effects. But you don't wanna have silences. So if somebody's not talking, don't leave it there because then it adds up. And if they're not properly synchronized, like it shows and just like frequencies and everything, just keep when somebody's talking. So chop it like really close to each other. And the silences, let them be actual like digital like spaces in between, and you're gonna sort that out later. There's no problem. So here is where, for example, if you can. It's more like a puzzle. Like it ends up being like a puzzle. You imagine there was a clipping on one lavalier. You have them all laid out like this. This is where you're gonna be like, okay, this one doesn't work. Does the one on top work? Okay. Is the boom okay? If nothing works and you've messed up, you can then do ADR, which I think is next slide. Yeah. So automated dialogue replacement. Now it's expensive. If you're on a set with like a budget, for example, like bringing back actors back in costs money. Hiring a space to edit costs money. But even on independent filmmaking and low budget filmmaking, you know that people are really busy, and it's really hard to coordinate schedules. So if you're on set and you realize that all the tracks have clipped, and for some reason everybody's rushed, you don't have time in the moment to redo the scene, you'll have to take extra time on location, or I would normally do that on location and ask the actors, okay, let's do this line. And you record on the camera, on your phone, for example, you record what's happening on the scene, and then you show them, and then you learn and you train them, and you try to get it done on location, because it's really hard to bring everybody back together. I know I tried to do that one day with somebody, and they left the country. And then it's like, okay, I can't do it via Zoom, like there's no way. So try to, as much as you can on location, so that post-production is not only about fixing issues, but about like adding to the film, right? So this, for example, you could also work with specific plugins for dialogue. So like I was saying, the mouth declick, or also S's, like there's not as much in English, but I know in Spanish there's a lot of S, and there's like people who speak with really loud S's, and it's like, it's really hard to get rid of them. So you want to make sure that you're treating each voice consistently, so that I've cleaned all the tracks except one, and suddenly in one scene the character suddenly talks, and it's like, okay, I forgot that one. So you want to make sure it makes sense. That's also part of another process in EQ as well. You can do something that I learned in English is called notch filter as well. It's basically if there's a noise in dialogue. So for example, imagine you can't do ADR. It's not clipping. It's if there's like a loud bang, or even the noise of a generator. It's terrible. Generators are so loud. So if there's no way for you to reshoot that, re-record that, and you want to try to get rid of it, you could try something like this. So a notch filter would be selecting the frequency where it happens. So we were talking about the frequencies, selecting where it happens, where that noise is, and get rid of only that noise. So you would have it in such a device like this. Basically, like there's so many tutorials, it's okay. It's different options you have. So other plugins, yeah. I think most things that are annoying, I don't know, what are other annoying things about the voice? Yeah, it's mostly that. Yeah. So, okay, next one. Okay. Well, about noise as well, about voice, dialogue. You can't really direct actors, and actors normally are directed more in terms of just how they move or how they present. But also, sometimes I've had to step in when an actor had a very inconsistent voice, where their dynamic range was all over the place, and it was like, and it's like, you need times like this. If it's not for creative purposes, you might wanna not go to the actor and be like, actually, can you talk differently? But like, maybe go up to someone and be like, hey, dude, this could be a problem, because how are you gonna get rid of an annoying frequency if your actor covers all the frequencies? And getting rid of like this one sound will mean that at some point your actor will go, like, on the audio, like yeah, basically. So ambience and effects. This is another job I think I love. Follies, like, is that how you pronounce it? Foley? Follies are so much fun is what this guy is doing. Does everybody know what Foley is? Foley basically is, just faking the sounds. For example, most walkings on film are not like actual walking. You can record it on set. You can, normally what I do, just in case I don't have time in post, if I have time on set, I ask the actors to walk around the floors and with the shoes I want, and I follow them if I have some time, so that I have it for that scene. Or if it's a very specific sound that they're looking for, I also try to record it there. If not, and you have time, you can have fun with Foleys. Like, you gotta think, that's more creatively. You're changing completely the sound, you're faking it completely. And that means, that can add, for example, imagine you two, right? I wanna make you more dominant. Your shoes, even if on set you're wearing that, are gonna sound like super loud. Okay, so I'm gonna fake that. And then at the same time, like for example, if we're recording on a place that we want to pretend like it has, I don't know, porcelain floors or whatever, and we can't have an actual big room with that, we can just have this little box with porcelain or something that sounds like it, and just do it. It's harder than it looks, I swear to God. Like, it's so hard. I've been humbled and really embarrassed doing it, because it's just, yeah, making it sound natural without actual moving is complicated. But it's also a lot of fun. So yeah, Foley's is one. Then you've got other types. I can't really read. Design FX. It's basically the one that adds like creative to it, or the one that's more realistic. But basically the main one is Foley's, what you could look at. Okay, next. Sorry. Okay, sound libraries. Sound libraries are great also if you don't have time. What you want to look at mostly is royalties. Like really, it's a big issue. Like, if you don't make sure that there's no copyright, then like it can bring either legal issues or like not let them post you online or whatever. So there's specific sound banks online that you can find. So for example, Freesound is a very basic one I've used a lot. I've probably used it. You're nodding, so I've probably used it. It's free, almost, I think everything on it is free. And you've got really so much that you can also lose a lot of time. So what I would say is, the second you start filming and the second you decide, okay, I actually want to do this, even if it's not just your main job, but you want to do this more often, I would build my own sound library. So from shooting to shooting, I would select things I record, pieces of audio I find, and then, put it together on an actual like sound library. I've been lucky that sometimes I've met like people who are about to retire, and it was the little bit of passing the torch. I was like, can you give me your sound library? And they would give it to you, and it's like, you've got the hard drive, and you've got like, just saves you so much time. And such specific sounds, like also when you name them, it's like person walking on this, blah, 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 wearing whatever. It's like, okay, that's really specific, but it works. So that's one I would do, you know how it works on a set, you've got a lot of time where you're not doing anything because another department is doing a lot. So what you can do in those times, I would just use the gear that they have given me and just walk around and like record stuff. So you create your sound library. I found that BBC also has like a sound library, which is really interesting. It's all free as well, and they have a lot of stuff. So the BBC sound library. YouTube is also good. Again, you have to check that it's royalty free. And then the softwares, as I was saying, the software itself. There's a lot of softwares that have sound libraries in them already, and that assures you that there's no problem with royalties. That you don't even need to download it on your computer. You can just put it up, no problem. And create your own. Basically, that's another option. Next slide. Okay. So then once you've got everything edited, fixed, you've got sound mixing. Now, sound mixing is when you put it all together. And this is probably where the existential crisis will come, of realizing, why does everything sound bad if I just cleaned it up? Like, if I've just sorted everything out, why does it sound bad? you need, because it needs work, and everything cannot sound at the same level. So for example, normally for fiction, dialogue is what you would use as reference. So the dialogue would be a certain loudness, let's say, and then you would decide, okay, the people talking on the restaurant will be this low or this high up. But you base it, like you're basically doing it in reference to the dialogue. That's also where you're going to figure out if you've been able to consistently edit one voice, or if the voice changes so much, then you will have to work more on it. So yeah, basically, and here you can get as creative and fake it as much as you want. Like that's why I say also like make sure that dialogue, it's not really overlapping. If it's strictly necessary, it's never really strictly necessary that dialogue really overlaps, because you can overlap it in post. But for example, you know how we shot different angles, right? So if they choose an angle of, if I've recorded you talking, but they choose an angle where it's shooting behind him, I can choose another audio file that works better for me. If they're talking together and I can see him but not him, I can't, if the dialogue is overlapping, I can't really choose another option, because it shows the tempos, the movements. So if you have pieces separate, you can then fake it as much as you want. As well, this will be more for, it's like dressing your mix, basically. It's you're adding emotion to it. For example, have you seen the Batman movie, the latest one? I haven't seen it, but I've studied it. Like I haven't seen it, but like the rain is very important in it. The sound of the rain is like crucial. Every scene has different rain sounds. So, and also the level. For example, there's a scene where it's a very intimate moment, and you can hear the rain, and suddenly the rain is gone. You don't notice it, but it means that you put more attention to dialogue. So this is obviously not realistic. The rain would not just stop for a second and then come back. I mean, maybe in Ireland, because the weather changes so much, but like not really. So that is where you decide here. You're like, okay, I don't want to hear her like walking so like loud anymore, because she's had like this character arc and now is insecure. Okay, I level it down a little bit. Like you play with that, you know, you take some liberties. And when you're creating a world, let's say a world of sound, the same way we're creating a world with images, as long as it's coherent to your story, to your movie, it doesn't have to be realistic. Think of like punching, right, in movies. Like punching in real life sounds ridiculous. Like a punch in real life sounds just like it's, imagine Fight Club with that. Like nobody would take it seriously, right? And it's like, we watch these movies and we never stop, and it's like, oh, actually this is not like what punching sounds like. Because we've like taken that into like our subconscious, and we're like, yeah, this is punching in movies. We agree on that, no problem. Bones cracking as well. It's normally done with celery or stuff like that. It's disgusting. It doesn't really sound like this, but we don't really care. So it's not, you're not like messing up the movie by like changing the way you want somebody to sound when they fall over. Or normally it's very violent stuff, but like you're not harming anyone by like trying to create another like world of sound. So you can also push it, you know? Same with like leitmotifs as well. So like in Lord of the Rings, like the ring has a sound. Like a ring would never have a sound in real life, but you're giving it that. And it's also an asset. So you want to give yourself as much assets as you can in case somebody doesn't work in image, for example. Like you probably can't hire an entire village to shoot a scene, but you can shoot a scene and hear an entire village. So see how you can work with that, basically. Another one is when you're learning, when you're working with levels, for example. Have you seen the movie Sicario? Okay. So the big explosion that there is at the beginning when they're at the house with all the dead people and everything, it comes straight after a split moment of silence. And that happens in a lot of horror movies, a lot of thriller. There's always a split second of silence. And since I've noticed this, whenever I hear a silence, I'm like, okay, it's coming, I know it. And it's true. If I'm talking like this and I'm suddenly like, like, doesn't make a difference. But if I talk and then I stop and then I scream, that's like it catches your attention. It freaks you out. I mean, Sicario fucking like give me a heart attack. Sorry for cursing. But like, so these little things that you that you learn and you practice, and just making it work for you, basically. So yeah, that would be one. And then finally, sorry, I'm almost on time. EQ. EQ is interesting. EQ is really fun. I was really scared of it at the start because it's a lot of graphs, and I think that's why all those like fancy softwares with so many options, and you're like, oh my god, so much. It's very simple in the end. You can do it physically on a mixing desk, right? You've got all the knobs, which most of them, we don't really know what they are for, but they're there. This is basically like regulating highs, lows, mids, finding also like the notch filter that we talked about. You can create reverb, you can create just any effects, really, for the tracks. So, for example, a really cool way to edit, I like the multi-band approach. So basically you have spread out your mids, well, your lows, your mids, and your highs. I think it's on the next slide. Next slide. Yeah, so your highs would be like, 6 to 20 kilohertz. They are like the complexity of the voice. So they are, for example, a piano. If you hear it without the highs, it's just dum, 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 like it doesn't sound like a piano. Once it has the highs, it has this extra, like what you can recognize as the instrument, right? The mids is where the human voice normally is, where the most of the voice is. If you lose that, you normally lose the voice. And then your lows would be, the tonality, or like subwoofers, for example, right? Which is what travels further when there's like a concert or whatever. So you would see it on also such a display, such as like the notch filter that we talked about. And normally, one rule that I learned pretty fast is that when you're getting rid of either cutting or boosting, normally you could cut really narrow and you boost wide. So if you cut too much, you're gonna hear it. Like you're losing, like, I always compare it to like a color palette. Like, you're losing information, too much information. And if you boost like just one, like suddenly it's like, like it's too much. So you're gonna boost so that it's kind of like organic, it happens organically, let's say. So it's gonna be as well with your ears. And so it's also interesting to edit both with headphones and with speakers, because it sounds, again, so different. Never with earphones, please. Like, you don't wanna mess up your hearing. But there's, for example, if you're editing, thinking of where it's going to be projected as well, what's the system they have? That's more the mastering. That's how you deliver the file. So there's the Dolbos 5.1 and then more, and how many speakers you have, and if it's stereo, and like this part I always get like, I don't know. It's even too technical sometimes for me, but it changes as well. And you can play with it. And now they are advancing so much in technology that like there's movies you can go watch and you can hear it all around you. And you can hear like a bird, like I think it was the new Avatar movie, I noticed like a bird that was like behind. I was like, oh, okay. Like you can hear it everywhere. That's all edited. You're deciding where the information is coming out. So that's gonna be that part too. And then a very basic one is high and low pass. So if you've got some really loud, some really high frequencies that you want to get rid of, you just do like a literal wall, not straight wall, but like always a little bit, give it a little bit space, just like boosting wide. And you can just do this like low pass or high pass for it. One thing as well that I forgot to mention is that when you're editing, make sure that once you've chopped up the audios and you have the pieces, that you do fade-ins and fade-outs. So that's what you make sure that the voice is not just like blah, 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 blah. Like it's more like it just happens a little bit more organically. Man, this is going to be the word now. Okay, next slide. So mastering is basically delivering the file. I'm not sure if this is the last slide. Can you put the next one, please? Yeah. So mastering is just delivering the file. Normally, I've delivered WAV files. But yeah, that depends as well on your client or the people you're working with. So you might need to do it differently. This is your master. It's no longer your mix. It's the master all together, all equalized, all nicely put. So next one, last one. If you need anything, you can contact me. I finally got Instagram. So you can text me if you need, message me. I'll try to be of any assistance. You will have some sound gear available. I will put up the presentation somewhere. If you want me to send it directly to you, maybe you can come up to me, give me the email, I can send it to you. And you'll also have the recording of the session. So do you have any questions? You've been asking now, but yeah.
I have a question. Sorry. Like if you have a long continuous take and the actor is speaking in a normal voice and then they have an argument and there is like a massive range from really quiet to screaming, do you actually mess with the levels during the take? So you wouldn't just like set it on really low and...
Oh, okay. So I would say normally for really long takes, and if we know that there's going to be an argument, that's why you learn the dialogue normally, so you know when it's going to happen. If it's not really sudden, you can mess with the levels, but always be really careful. Don't just lower it super quickly because it will really show. Test it out before. Always be present in rehearsals if you can. If you're not bothering camera, be present in rehearsals. Because again, it's different when the actor is just talking to you and when it's right on scene. So normally I would, the same way a focus puller would have marks, I would also have like written down or little marks of like, okay, now I have to lower it so many dB. So you can have it this way. Or you can also do it by operating the boom. For example, when they argue, you're gonna get a little bit further. So it depends on if it works better for you. It's just being careful with it because it's very directional mics and it's very sensitive gain levels. So any changes will show. I mean, it's not to be scared. Like you can do it. Like it's not rocket science. But just find what works for you. There's these options I've normally done. Yeah. Somebody? Yeah. This was recorded. Yeah. So I don't know if anybody else has any questions. You've asked some already. So. Sorry.
Like, I can't understand shit in Christopher Nolan movies. They're whispering, murmuring. Are they not using any of these techniques? What's going on there? Is it a stylistic choice?
So this is the same, similar to the discussion there's been lately with some streaming services that show movies that you can't even watch in a dark room because you can't see it, because it's so, the brightness, there's no brightness, there's no light. So it can either be how the sound was mastered or the image is presented and that your devices don't pick it up. Or honestly, I also don't understand this, and I've watched videos talking about this, that just like we've created this thing called like sound in film and how dialogue should sound in film. And it's pretty low and unintelligible. I always need subtitles, even in my mother tongue. I always need subtitles because I can't understand most things. But even if I watch movies that are really clear, the voice is really clear, it feels to me like telenovelas. It feels to me like soap operas, like not cinematic, kind of. And I think it's because of this narrative that has been, I don't know, like... Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry. It could be acting. That's what I mean. Like, it would be interesting that like actors also like you have a little bit of say in like how they talk, but you should be able to still pick up even if they're whispering. You know, you should be able to still pick up on the sound. So it's really up to acting, the mix, and then how you present it. Yeah. And where? So yeah, basically, that's it. Nobody has any more questions. Everyone is good. Okay, thank you so much.